WillNisley.com. Will Nisley.
Hi, I'm Carl Azuz for CNN 10. Welcome to the show. First story we're explaining today is how the mysterious disappearance of a journalist is having ripple effects around the world. Jamal Khashoggi is a columnist for the Washington Post. He's been living in Washington, D.C. He's originally from Saudi Arabia, and he used to be an advisor to the Saudi government. But he became critical of that government and wrote critical columns about it in the Post. On October 2nd, Khashoggi was in Istanbul, Turkey. He was visiting the Saudi consulate there to get paperwork that would allow him to marry his Turkish fiancée. That's the last time he was seen. Turkish officials say Saudi Arabia, Khashoggi's home country that he had criticized, is responsible for his disappearance and possibly his murder. Saudi Arabia's government says it hasn't been involved in any way in Khashoggi's disappearance and says he left the Saudi consulate on the afternoon he visited it. But while Saudi Arabia and Turkey have formed a team to investigate, international pressure has been heating up. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened severe punishment for Saudi Arabia if its government is found to be responsible for Khashoggi's murder. Saudi Arabia's government says it would respond to any action against it with even greater action. Britain, France, and Germany are also pushing Saudi Arabia for answers related to Khashoggi's disappearance. With all this going on, a significant event just took place involving the U.S. and Turkey. Andrew Brunson was released from a Turkish prison. He's an American pastor who'd lived and worked in Turkey for more than 23 years, but he was arrested in March of 2016 and accused of being involved in a failed coup in Turkey. American officials and activists said Pastor Brunson was innocent and was arrested mainly because of his Christian faith. He returned to the U.S. over the weekend. President Trump says the timing of Brunson's release during the international tensions over Khashoggi's disappearance was strictly coincidental and that the U.S. made no deal with Turkey for Brunson's return. He said the U.S. greatly appreciated the release and that it could lead to good, perhaps great relations between the U.S. and Turkey. Stateside, his attention will be on Florida and southern Georgia this week when the president visits some of the areas damaged by Hurricane Michael. He's issued a major disaster declaration for Florida that will add federal funding to the state and local relief efforts. At least 18 deaths have been blamed on the storm. Hundreds of thousands of people are still without electricity 5 days after Michael made landfall. In some areas, residents expect it to take years before they're back to normal.
Officials here had warned people across the Panhandle that they would need to fend for themselves for the 72 hours after the hurricane. Well, that window has now closed, and so a lot of people are now relying on the state to provide food and water. There are now several areas set up around town where people can pick up those supplies. There is also a curfew in effect from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It is eerie to drive around at night because there are no lights on, there's no power, and there's no people around either, though it's hard to imagine that there would be many people here anyways, even without a curfew, because many of the homes here look something like this. They are completely uninhabitable. This is actually a strip mall here. This was an office, there was a bakery over there, and then a print shop. The problem is that this makes an inviting target for looters, and that continues to be a problem. People helping themselves to things at homes and businesses, so much so that firefighters are actually going out on some calls with law enforcement just in case there are any security concerns around running into looters accidentally. Those firefighters also expect that they will still find people who are trapped inside their homes even today. They also expect they'll find bodies and that the death toll in this area will rise. There are 240,000 plus people across Florida without power. But for the school system, that is really the least of their concerns because most of the schools in this district were badly damaged. That means the vast majority of the students in this district, there are 26,000 of them, will be displaced. So now the school board has a problem. What do you do to make sure that those kids can continue their education? They might have to use the buildings that are still standing and are still intact. They may have to do 2 sessions of school in one day in order to make that happen. The school board is going to meet tomorrow to make a final decision on that.
10-second trivia. Who completed the first solo flight around the world? Wiley Post, Charles Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart, or Louis Blériot? An American aviator named Wiley Post was the first to do this, completing the feat in 1933. It took him more than 7 days and several stops to do it. Today, of course, you can travel much faster, even taking a commercial flight from Singapore to New York City in around 18 hours. That's kind of an extreme example, though. It is the longest passenger flight in the world. More than 10,000 miles, it costs more than $1,400 one way, and that's as long as you don't select business or first class. What's it like to be in the air for that long?
Come fly with me, let's fly, let's fly. Hey, back up, let's fly away.
Many months in the planning, lots of care and dedication, a brand new aircraft, and a record to be broken. The longest flight in the world. Here we go. Wheels up.
16 hours left of flying. Nothing really much to do really except keep an eye on things, climb as high as we can, communicate with air traffic control. Nothing exciting, which is how I like it.
So this is the selection of food that is served immediately after takeoff. I've chosen to have all three of the main options. What's this?
Oh, this is, we call it guaju. So this is for us to dispose all the like liquids, which is with puffs, so that it won't choke the sink.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was the rice maker. Okay, so we've got 11 and a half hours still to go. Most of the plane is asleep. I can't sleep yet. I want to save my sleep to the last 6 or 7 hours of the flight, so I'm fresh when we land in the early morning. So that means time for movies. And on this flight, there are hundreds and hundreds.
So we did quite a number of flight trials. Most of the passengers, after the first meal, they will sleep about 6 hours, and then they wake up, they're looking for food to eat.
We're now 2 hours out of Newark Airport. Time to get dressed once again. I always get dressed for about this time before landing on a long flight. Well, the bathrooms get rather nasty. This A350 has 161 passengers on board. There's no economy class here, but there is premium economy. And morning, good flight. Morning. What do you think of it?
It's great.
Longest flight in the world. You enjoy it?
Yes, it's good.
Yay! And so we have arrived. 17 hours and 25 minutes, a quicker crossing because of the excellent tailwinds. This flight, along with the other ultra-long hauls, usher in an entirely new era of travel. Longer distances, any two places on the globe can now pretty much be joined up. The world really is now our oyster.
Boston Dynamics Atlas robot, which is classified as a humanoid robot because it looks awfully human-ish, is getting more sure-footed. The company recently released footage of it doing parkour. Now, maybe jumping over a log isn't particularly impressive, but the box jumps and the agility the machine shows in completing them has a lot of folks either really impressed or really concerned. It's one fewer trick people could use to escape. How are people going to stay one step ahead of robots if they keep stepping up their agilities and increasing their abilities? If a machine gets its running gear into gear and jumps into action, doing parkour of parcourse is going to be par for the course when vaulting into pursuit of a parkour practitioner. I'm Carl Azuz, and that pretty much completes the circuit for today's edition of CNN.